Have any idea how critical a header extension is to horsepower? Well, this time on Engine Masters, you are gonna find out. The COVID 350 is back. I love it. You love it. And we will use it this time to show you the power of header collector extensions. So this is the part that bolts to the back of your exhaust header, and this one's roughly 18 inches long. I will tell you there's a lot of power to be had or lost with the correct length header extension. So we're gonna be testing a bunch of that. I'm gonna do it on some exhaust headers that are 1 5/8, probably too small for this engine, and we're also gonna do it on some 1 3/4 inch headers, because I wanna see, does that perfect length change depending on the size of the header tube and whether the header is optimal for the engine or not. So, a whole lot of exhaust tech coming your way. Now, if you haven't seen it before, let me tell you what this engine is all about. We call it the COVID 350 because I built it during the lockdown here in California using parts that were left over in my garage. It is your standard small block Chevy. It is a 355 cubic inch small block Chevy, stock stroke, 30 thousandths overbore. The short block includes stock cast crank, 2-bolt mains, H-beam rods, forged pistons. It has 11 1/4 to 1 compression, which is what makes it great. It's got a big cam in it, a comp solid roller, 242, 248 at 50. With the rockers on here, it's got 600 lift. It has a Holley 850 carb. It has an Edelbrock Super Victor intake manifold and a Trick Moroso oil pan. Now, in the past, this has made as much as 500 horsepower, but I guarantee you we will be killing that power with this tiny set of headers on here, which we're gonna run first before we go into some collector length adjustments to either make or break some horsepower. This thing used to make 447 pound-feet and 500 horsepower.
Do you think it will now?
No.
Neither do I. But you might be right.
Well, it's gonna be bad. What if it's good? So here's the good news, bad news. The good news is our old configuration making 500 horsepower, 447 pound-feet, and then the red lines here are the smaller header with no collector extension whatsoever. So our power peaks with the small header and no collector are actually 442.6 pound-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM, and we made 485.9 horsepower at 6,600. I'm interested about how it meets in the middle. I thought that it would be way more worse at the bottom than at the top.
Well, the difference in peak torque's not that much if you look at it. And,
yeah, right there.
Yeah, and that's right where they get the closest, but right at the bottom of the pull, like out of the hole on drag strip kind of application, I bet you there's 50 foot-pounds there or more.
Yeah, at 4,000 RPM, what's the difference?
40 pound-feet.
Yeah, 40 pound-feet right
40.
at the hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a disaster. Yeah, so next step, let's bolt a 3-inch collector extension on it that's about this long.
Okay.
Troy made me a custom one, because normally they come 18 inches.
Yeah, it's kind
and
of standard.
So, who knows? All right,
Let's try it.
Let's go. Here we go. When you go to the drag strip, often it's cool to like uncork your headers, and people will do it just by disconnecting the flange right at the end of the header. What you really want is a collector extension. As we'll see, it should add a bunch of low-end power. They normally come in an 18-inch length, which is what I have here from Summit Racing. It's a pretty cheap unit. We've tacked on another 12 inches to it just so that we can see what it's going to do, so that we can progressively chop off length and see what makes the best power. So this is going to be a real simple bolt-on. It's right there at the flange.
This is our wideband oxygen sensor, and on that last run it actually indicated that the air-fuel ratio was maybe a little bit lean, but it really was just because this is sitting right at the end of the collector and contaminated with fresh air. You really want to have this moved up a minimum of 12 inches from the exit point, just to try and keep fresh air from contaminating it and giving you a false reading.
Here's what's next. There's an old Hot Rodder's tale that says, if you paint a line of spray paint on your collector extension and you look at where it burns off, you cut it right there, and that's the optimum length. But we're not gonna go directly to that mark. We're gonna progressively hack this thing down and see what's best. Well, the 30-inch collector extension would appear to have made this a whole new motor, but we haven't really looked at the data yet. Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Okay, this is why you run collector extensions. Look at the difference in torque down here. The black line is going to be what we just did with the collector extension. Red line is a no collector extension at all, and that is a lot of meat of torque. It actually, you know, did better up at the top in a certain range also. The whoop-de-doo is strange.
Yeah, it's that whole wave tuning and what it does in different spots.
But it really pumped it up right around peak horsepower.
Oh,
Yeah.
right there, yeah.
Yeah, right up in here.
So we've been talking a lot about the shapes of the curve, which once again, I always try and reinforce, they tell a much better story than the peak numbers. But the peak numbers are 441.6 pound-feet of torque at 5,100 RPM and 495.5 horsepower at 6,400 RPM. That's with the collector extensions. Let's go have a look at our painted stripe, see what it's telling us.
Oh, it'll tell us exactly where we need to cut. Maybe not now.
I'm going to ignore it. Well, let's go in there and have a look. Yeah. Let me get my tape measure. What do you think of my paint stripe, Steve?
Well, I mean, there's still a lot of it there, Freiberger.
But I like the way you can actually tell it's missing here clearly, and then it's kind of baked and it gets less and less and less.
Oh, yeah.
So this basically 5 inches back, let's say, but we're going to ignore that right now, and we're going to cut 6 inches off the back of this thing. There we go. Here we go, now 24-inch collector length extension in black and our old 30-inchers in red. You can see that we lost just a tiny, tiny little bit down here, gained here, and otherwise it's a wash. Right now we still believe that either 24 or 30 is better than no collector extension at all.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I know this is going to be hard for you, Steve, but we're going to take another 6 inches.
What?
Not even sure what that means.
I didn't get it either.
Next up, 18 inches. Every time we cut the collector extension shorter, we're losing low-end torque. It trades places a little bit throughout the curve, and then up top, the shorter one keeps making just a hair more horsepower, just a hair. So I guess we go another 6 inches, huh?
Absolutely.
All right. Now we've got these at 12 inches overall, but look at my spray paint story here. It's actually creeping that way. Remember when I first started, it was at 5 inches, and it's now basically at 8. So the question is, how reliable is that? And also, I think you can already see that the trend of the paint burn is not working out well. Let's go dyno test it with 12-inch extensions. Loser. Huh. Black lines are 12-inch extensions, red lines are 18. You can see the trend. We just continue to lose more and more bottom end. In fact, this is the ugliest move we've made yet, in my opinion. So you're gonna go whack another 6?
Yeah.
Or paint stripe.
You can hold the gloves for the paint stripe.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, we're gonna go to the paint stripe. Mr. Brule says our new Power Peaks are 441.7 pound-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM, 488.8 horsepower is at 6,600. So you're going to compare the 8-inch extension to
The 12.
the 12. And it just continues to plummet. Look at that garbage.
Jeez.
You know what? At least it tells you the trend is all the same direction. The collector length extensions affect torque at below peak. Not so much at the top end. But the other thing is, notice how each time we shorten it, the fail moves higher and higher upstream. Did you notice that?
Yep.
You really have to look at these curves and decide where you want to kill your torque. That's kind of your only
all
choice.
application.
Yeah, you're not making more horsepower at any point. So really it comes down to how much bottom end torque do you want to make or kill. So what I've learned so far is you're better to err on the side of too long of a collector than too short. We're going to look at best to worst. This is 24 inches to 8 inches, and look at that. Once again, like I said, top end, really above 4,500, it doesn't matter. It does a tiny bit, but not, I mean, that doesn't alter your life. This does. Well, now the question is, when we put the 1 3/4 inch chassis headers on this thing, are they better than the 1 5/8? And is the answer about collector length the same? I know that the collector is going to be better, but is the length going to end up being the same?
I see what the question is, whether it's still the 24,
Right.
or whether it turns into an 18 or a 12 or something like that on a larger tube.
Exactly.
So, one way to find out.
So now we're going to go on both the 1 5/8 headers and install the 1 3/4 larger ones, and I guess we'll run them first with open, no extensions on them as well.
Just the way we did this.
All right, let's swap it out. Here's the new hotness. So the headers on this thing have tube diameters of 1 5/8 inches, and these are 1 3/4. So the higher the RPM, the larger the displacement, the more power you're making, the more you tend to like a larger header tube diameter. The thing that is consistent with these two is that they both have a 3-inch diameter collector. The other thing about this new bigger header is that I had mentioned that I measured out the entire length of these. These are on average 2 inches longer than the other as far as the tube, but also look at the difference in the collector itself. The distance from here to here is longer on the larger header than it is on the shorter one by quite a bit. So it's almost got some built-in extra collector extension length on it. That extra length right there is going to make more difference in the ultimate overall collector length than it would as far as the diameter or length of this tubing. That's a better header.
Yeah.
Well, that answers our question about whether the 1 3/4 inch header is more appropriately sized, as you would say, for this engine. What we're looking at here, by the way, is the 1 5/8 header in red and the 1 3/4 header in black. You can see the 1 5/8 was better down here below 4,500 RPM, but when we started to really move some air, obviously the 1 3/4 is a whole lot better.
It's the old myth of smaller tube diameter is better for low-end torque, right?
Yeah, in this case it did, which is interesting because it also has shorter overall length than the larger header. But I would choose the 1 3/4 inch header.
Oh, look at that top-end charge. I mean, it's clearly superior by a pretty significant amount.
Our peak power numbers now with the 1 3/4 inch header are 497.2 horsepower at 6,700 RPM. The torque is 446.7 at 5,000 RPM. And the other thing that I've noted is that the RPM at peak power hasn't really changed based on the header tube diameter.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So now we go put on the 30-inch collector extension on this thing. Here we go with the 30-incher. So we're gonna go 1 3/4 header versus 1 3/4 header. This is what we did with the collector extension. Same exact trend we saw with the other header. It only matters below peak torque. So of course, what you're looking at here is the black line with the big collector extension, red line without, and that's just a massive gain in that bottom end torque. And I'm gonna make a prediction. I've learned not to make predictions on the show, but wait for it.
I know
That's
where you're
going to get worse and worse as we cut the collector shorter.
What?
Yeah. But I guess we got to do the same thing. Want to take 6 inches down?
Sure, absolutely. Well, Troy does.
Troy. Oh, he's going to ding your dyno. Watch. Oh, he didn't.
He knows what he's doing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That was awesome. That was the greatest changeover in the history of the show. All right, thanks to Troy, the Chop Goldie, we've now got 24-inch extensions. Sorry, we're going to overlay the 30-inch collector extension with this bigger header. And sure enough, the difference is less, but the longer pipe had more torque. Wait
a minute. No, it's the other way
game
around.
changer. I assumed, and you know what happens when you assume? I made a chump out of myself. The shorter collector extension made more torque at the bottom end. That is the 24-incher, and the red line is the 30-incher. The plot thickens.
You know, it's a combination of length and diameter, and we found something where it's filling the cylinder better at that engine speed is all there is.
That's all there is. That's really interesting.
The 24 is better.
We're just baffled by this because the trend we saw the whole time, even with the 30-incher that we just tested, was that the longer extension was going to make more torque below the RPM at peak torque, and that did not happen this time. We shortened it up 6 inches and made more bottom end.
Now the next 6 inches going to 18, it is really going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Nobody can predict that one because it just threw us this curveball.
Do we do 2, 4? I don't want to blow past some data that we wouldn't otherwise capture.
Why not 3? We could split the...
You want to do 3?
Yeah. That way it's half our
6 and
increment.
6. That's good. Go 3, Troy. 3. Very interesting. Every test we've done this far has been 6 inches, and look at that, that's 3 inches. This low end torque, again, the torque below the RPM at peak torque, once again, climbed with the shorter collector.
Yeah.
It made more power than the smaller header. This blue line, that's with the 30-incher. The red line's the 24, and now we're at 21.
So we just keep adding torque.
Yeah.
And the other thing we just learned is only 3 inches made a measurable difference. As a matter of fact, the blue line to the red line is 6 inches. The red line to the black line is 3 inches.
Well, the only choice now is another 3 inches.
Another 3.
Right. But you know what? We're basically trying to find the ideal tuned length by trial and error. Like if you had a
Trombone, right?
A trombone.
Yeah.
You know.
Which actually is a lesson about the pressure wave in there because it makes a different sound, longer or shorter, because the pressure wave is coming out longer or shorter. It's the same exact thing we're doing here.
There's also inertial ram where it's packing, and it can change that where it's actually filling the cylinder from the intake side more effectively because what the exhaust is doing.
Right.
First and second wave reflective.
Yeah, all of that stuff that we don't understand but that we can
Inertial
test.
ram, reflective wave, all of that. All the stuff that we can't see that we wish we could.
Wow, this just became great.
Yeah, this was fun.
It really did. So 3 more inches. Troy. This is getting really exciting because that looks like that was another big improvement in the overall average power. Look at that, we're making 498 horsepower now and 442.2 pound-feet of torque. We're gonna compare our new 18-inch collector with our old 21-inch collector. Look at that.
Just smooth that and filled that in.
So The gains are getting smaller, but the trend continues with this larger header that when we shorten that collector, it's picking up the torque right here. The black line is the shorter 18-inch collector, red line is the longer 21-incher. And look what's happening up here, is they come together around peak torque and then diverge again afterwards. This is pretty awesome.
These changes are pretty significant. You know, I'd like to say that the next change is kind of like timing and it's going to do almost nothing and we know we're in the sweet spot.
That's what I feel.
Every change we're making, it's been fairly significant. So the next change again is going to be really interesting.
Well, the averages came up. Like average torque with the 21-inch tube, 417.6. Average throughout the curve with the 18, 419.7. That's 2.1, which on average is...
That's significant.
Yeah.
And like Steve was saying, the curve is just nicer. It filled in some of that dip that we had been seeing with the longer collector extension.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, and at the top too.
So interesting.
We just got to go cut another 3 off.
So we're going to go 15 and then 12.
And that should tell us a whole bunch right there. That's when the change will, I think,
we'll catch the
it'll
change
switch at
somewhere in there.
Right now, it's the out of the box 18-inch length.
Yeah, and it worked good.
Yeah. Now we've got it down to 15 inches. We're trying to find that perfect length to make the COVID 350 the best it can be.
That might be the best right here.
So here, the 18-inch extension is red. The new 15-incher is black.
We're close.
We're right, and I mean...
But I think we might be coming down the other side right now.
I think so.
Well, you look at the peaks, and we're actually up at peak in both cases. We're now making 442.7 pound-feet of torque at 5,000, which is up by half, and we're making 499 horsepower at 6,600 RPM, which is up by 0.4. Essentially, the performance in the car, this is the same.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I think we're at the point of no return. We don't really need to keep hacking this thing down unless you just want to find out where it does
I think
fall
we need to
off.
make one more cut.
Okay.
Me too, I agree.
I think one more 3-incher.
Okay.
Just to see if we move down to lose some more torque and move, you know, lose a little bit somewhere else. Just to make sure we're on the other side of that window.
But nevertheless, the big story is still that the trend inverted.
Inverted, yeah. Which is has something to do with the diameter. I'm not that smart. I don't know.
So let's go hack another 3. And now we're down to 12 inches. I think this is the tipping point.
I think it is.
Here comes the graph, and we got 496.9 horsepower, 444.1 pound-feet of torque, which happens to be our highest one yet, but that's not the story as usual. The overlay will be the story. So red lines, 15-inch, black lines, 12-inch. How do you call it? 15-inch. The 15 was better. We are at the tip-over point. So now we're going to compare 12 inches versus 18 inches. Okay, black line is 12 inches, red line 18 inches. Okay, so once we hit 18, we got to the point of diminishing return on big changes, but prior to that, we definitely saw an inverted trend from length versus torque. So I've actually learned a massive amount from this, and I guess the big thing is that I didn't think that pressure wave tuning of like F1 and Pro Stock type information would matter this much to an average engine like this.
I think that always matters. I mean, I think it's physics and it's going to apply to almost any engine.
Yeah.
That's all part of the track. I mean, from the top of the choke horn there to the end of the collector, it's all part of it.
Which is the other thing I learned, because I believe if we put a tunnel ram on this, meaning a big long intake runner different than what's there, it's going to change this again.
Absolutely. And then throw another camshaft in and
it's going to change it all again. And so that's the third thing is, well, there's many things that we test that we feel we can derive a trend from and give people advice. Yeah. And I've learned you can never say always in this engine stuff, but we can see trends. In this case, the only trend that I can tell you, knowing what I know right now, is you have to try it on your own car.
But it just goes to show you that all of this stuff matters every time, no matter what. And this is the difference between engine development and engine testing.
Right.
Yeah. And that development, as you say, would be different with a different intake and cam. It's fascinating. Yeah. And that we were able to see this kind of difference just by changing the header tube diameter. We would normally go, oh yeah, that 1 3/4 is going to make way more power, and it did, but who would have known that we would have seen that difference in the collector?
Yeah, and if it's that sensitive to pipe length, imagine the full exhaust system in your car and how that would affect your performance or your torque down low or up high or what have you.
Yeah. Well, but I guess the last thing I learned, if you really don't know, I still think you're better off with an out-of-the-box 18-inch collector than you are with nothing at all.
You can't hardly go wrong with an 18.
Yeah.
I mean, you're at least in that zone. And I think we've seen over and over, with nothing there, it just kills the bottom.
It's no good.
But if you have a 5,000 stall converter, who cares?
No.
This turned out way better than I expected.
Good.
Yeah, this was
Fun
awesome.
stuff.
Any final thoughts?
10 more questions.
Right.
And no more answers.
A lot of times development is cut and try, and that's what we found out here. You just have to zero in on what actually works.
Yeah.
It's undeniable.
But the thing we tested and proved is that it makes a difference, and you need to find out if you really care about ultimate performance.
Absolutely.
Yep. Which is what we kind of do every single time on Engine Masters. Your battery died?
Battery.
Oh yeah, you need a new battery.
Thought you were better than that, Troy.
I grounded battery.
Comes in here with the sawzall with the dead battery. Can you believe it? That was the header cutting scene. You know? No, I mean, I come over here. I want to get this header cut.
There we go.
Oh, hey, nice work, Troy. You got that cut in a jiffy.
This time on Engine Masters, it is my personal quest to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. This is going to be a very different kind of episode of Engine Masters because we're going to be building a complete engine from scratch. It's going to take us a few months, and we're going to be shooting as we go so that I can show you all of the details of all of the hard parts that are going in this thing. And the other thing that makes it really special is this is about my personal quest to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. Now, I know these days you can go get an LS engine and throw a turbo on it, and you can make 1,000 horsepower and it's no big deal, but there's no challenge in that. And because I am the flip-flops and big blocks kind of guy, I decided to do it with a naturally aspirated big block Chevy. And this is surprisingly a common combination that we're gonna do here. It's not rocket science, but versus like your standard street engine that many of you are used to, there's a lot of tips and tricks and special features here that I'm gonna show you as we go through it. Now first, I'm gonna talk about what the combination is and why I chose it. This is going to be a 582 cubic inch engine. Now, the reason I went there is, you know, you can build a 598, you can build a 632, you can build a 705 if you feel like it. Really, I took the advice of my good friend Steve Brule, who is the big block master and who's seen these all over the place, and he's like, Freiberger, here's the deal. You want this thing to last, you want to run a wet sump with it instead of dry sump oiling, you do not want a 4,500 stroke in this deal. So the core of it is a 4.375 stroke crank. And the thing is, at RPM, that doesn't dip down into the oil as much. It doesn't get as much of a windage problem, and it's gonna last longer. It's also in a tall deck block, and the reason for that is basically piston ring stability. I'm gonna be able to run a 6.7 inch rod in it and still have a piston that has a 1.3 inch compression height and doesn't even have the pin up into the oil ring. So ring stability is a big part of the reason why we chose that. Now let's talk about the specific components involved, and I have to thank Race Winning Brands, who has has helped me out a ton with this because, no lie, this is some very expensive stuff. Starting with this Dart all aluminum tall deck block. Now, obviously the aluminum feature of it is gonna save a ton of weight off the nose, but there's a whole lot of other things that are trick about this. The bore in this thing is 4,600, and I have chosen the complete Dart package where they will prep the entire block for you and ship it ready to assemble. And so that's a huge help. It's already been decked, it's already been bored and honed, it's already been a line board. This thing is ready to go. It is beef. And I love it. I've wanted an aluminum big block forever, so I'm so happy. Now, the pistons are from Diamond. They match the 4,600 bore in this thing. Now, you'll notice they've got a very small dome on them. And I should point out, this is the one custom thing in this entire program. Everything else on the table is directly off the shelf, but I wanted maximum compression. So we're running 14.7 to 1 compression ratio with just a 23 cc dome, because the chamber in these cylinder heads that I'll tell you about soon is only 97. A standard big block is closer to 118 to 121. And so with that smaller chamber, you can get more compression with a flatter piston. I also gave Diamond the specs of the camshaft that I want to run, and so they're able to cut the reliefs in it so that it'll match perfectly and I'm not going to have a valve to piston problem. You can see that it has vertical gas ports in it, and the rings in this are 0.43 inch for the first and second, and then it's got a 3mm oil ring. One thing that you got to think about when you're building a serious engine like this that is just not really on the radar of your typical street deal is the piston pin itself. Diamond asked me if I was going to be running a power adder or naturally aspirated. I swore that I was never going to put nitrous on this thing, and that's probably a lie. And so they were able to step me up to a beefier piston pin. My crank and my connecting rod both came from K1 Technologies. These are probably the most basic parts that you'll find in this engine. A 6.7 inch H-beam connecting rod, and the crankshaft is of course forged, and it's a 4.375 stroke. I've got no other real trickery in this as far as like special shaped counterweights or dual keyways or anything like that. We get into the beef of what I am counting on for the horsepower here, which is the Dart cylinder head. Now this thing is like a compromise in between a full race head, like their Big Chief stuff or like Spreadport stuff. It has a altered valve angle. It's 20 degrees on the intake instead of 25, which is stock, or 24, which is common in the aftermarket, but it still takes a conventional big block Chevy intake manifold. So that pattern is identical, but the intake ports are 451 cc's. So this thing's gonna flow big. And we were just lusting after the exhaust port over here, which is gnarly looking. The valves are titanium on the intake and Inconel on the exhaust. A little bit of overkill for what I'm doing, but it's gonna help me RPM. It is a 2,400 intake valve and a 1,800 exhaust. And once again, that 97 cc nice flat chamber for high compression. So that's the bones of what I'm starting with here. And now we're gonna run off and have to assemble the short block. And when I come back and give you the next update, I hope we can talk more specifically about the valve train that's gonna be going in my 582. Now it's 3 months and 1 pandemic later. What I'm going to show you now is some of the specialized components that are going to go on the outside of the engine that are a little bit different than your conventional big block Chevy. I'm going to kick it off with the oiling system. If you saw episode 56 of Engine Masters, you know that we made big horsepower and improved our oil pressure curve with a very trick Moroso oil pan, and that's why these guys are our new best friends for oiling. This pan's actually a little bit different than the one that we used before because it's not two-piece, it's a little bit cheaper. I thought I would end up using a flat dragster pan, but these guys advised that the sumped pan like this actually helps oil control and deceleration. And so this is more of a conventional chassis car type pan. However, there are some differences. First of all, this windage tray is a little more unique than what you might see in a standard street pan, mostly because it's got these dividers in it. This divides the pairs of connecting rods on the throws on the crankshaft. Cylinders 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. By separating them like this, you get even more oil control. On the oil pump, Moroso makes a bunch of very cool billet pumps. This is not like a regular cast housing that you would see on one of our normal performance buildups. Now, to be honest with you, I don't fully understand what they've got going on in here. I asked them about the oil pumps because they make like 6 or 7 different part numbers on them, and they looked at what I was going to do as far as clearances on the mains and rods and bearing diameters and RPM, and they picked a specific oil pump for me. I guess my best advice would be, if you're doing something radical like this, call them and get the advice on which pump to use, because there's a bunch of them. Next up, before we get into some hard parts, this is the head gasket that I'm going to use. This has become pretty typical for a really high performance buildup with a lot of compression or a lot of boost or nitrous. It is what they call an MLS gasket, or multi-layer steel. You can see that there is a solid shim here in the middle, and then there's 2 outer ones that are stamped with the embossments, and then it's all coated with a sealant. Now, the point of this type of gasket is that it's got some springiness to it. Especially in a boost or nitrous application, you can see that the cylinder head really wants to lift off the block and sometimes warp a little bit. And you'll see what we used to call torching the block, which is the head lifts, and often you'll see that the fire from combustion will just go right out the side, and especially on an aluminum block like this, it will just dig a groove. It's like you took, a plasma cutter and just put a big groove in the block. Obviously, I don't want that. And the Cometic MLS gasket is designed to solve that. Now we get into the hard parts, the valve train parts. And this is all a CompCams program. They are looking at making a package for engines like this. I've mentioned to you before that this is not rocket science what I'm doing here. This is a pretty standard engine package that a lot of bracket racers use. So while it's full race, they're also looking for reliability and durability. And so we've taken a bunch of steps toward that. First of all is in the cam profile itself, which at this point is a custom grind from Comp that eventually you should be able to buy off the shelf. It's aggressive. I'm going to talk to you about the duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift, and it's going to sound to you like advertised duration. It is 284 on the intake and 300 on the exhaust. That is a no fooling solid roller camshaft. The lift is above 850 on both lobes, and the lobe separation angle is 114. Other things for durability, the camshaft in this thing is what they call a 55mm cam, meaning that the cam bearing bores in the block are actually larger than a conventional big block Chevy. Sometimes you can do that with actually a needle roller bearing. I've done it with a Babbitt bearing. The whole point is to make the camshaft core a larger diameter so that it does not flex with the high valve spring pressures that we're going to use. It's just an element of beef. The other thing is, the solid roller lifters in this engine are a larger diameter than a conventional big block Chevy. A stock big block Chevy is 843 thousandths round in the bore inside the engine block. These are the Chrysler diameter of 0.904, 904 thousandths of an inch. And so the body of the lifter is physically bigger and the roller wheel is physically bigger, which gives you a number of benefits, a larger axle, but in particular, a different ramp on the camshaft lobe. So again, this is another thing that we told CompCams what we were doing, and it's another element of the package that they're going to be putting together for these engines. And of course, the dart block had to be custom ordered, bushed for those larger lifter diameters. Now, on a conventional big or small block Chevy or a number of other engines, they have what we call a stud-mounted rocker, this being that stud, which screws into the cylinder head right next to the valve spring and valve. And with that stud, the rocker arm slips over it. And often we will use with this what's called a stud girdle, which is a big piece of aluminum that ties together all of the rocker arm studs on one bank of the engine. The problem is we're dealing with big valves, high valve spring pressures, lots of RPM, and the stud-mounted rocker can still flex around quite a bit in that scenario. So instead, we're going to be using what's called shaft rockers. These happen to be from a company called T&D, which is sold through CompCams, and maybe one day will be part of this package that we're discussing. You can see that with the shaft-mounted rocker, there is a large aluminum brace right here that's going to bolt into the stock stud mounts, and then each rocker is going to mount individually onto that brace. It's called a shaft rocker because you can see it has a shaft running through the middle of it, which is like the axle. And then the rocker arm pivots on that axle. And by doing that, it just removes any flex side to side or up and down that's going to cause deflection, that's going to be a reliability problem, and also reduce lift and duration and things like that. Mostly it's a reliability issue. As far as valve springs, Comp has developed a new spring that is really for longevity. If you've got this thing in like a typical bracket race application, you might be changing valve springs like every 100 passes or something like that. They wanted to go closer to like 400 passes. If you look at the springs that are currently on my dart heads, you'll see that they're a big, heavy triple spring. This one is only a double, but it's all nicely scienced out and finished to be able to control this massive camshaft and have more reliability. And since, honestly, I'm never gonna rebuild this thing once it goes in a car, I need something like that. The other thing that is a little bit different from what you'd normally see on race engines is that it's got these lightweight tool steel valve spring retainers. What you've got here is titanium, which is pretty typical. Titanium is lighter than steel, so it helps with, overall weight and valve control. The tool steel is nearly as light as titanium, but it's not going to have the wear problems that you can often see with titanium, so that's what we're going to be running there. The other huge question that I get on social media every time I show pictures of this engine is what is going on with the belt drive on the front of the engine? This is a very nice Comp Cams camshaft belt drive. It would serve the same purpose as your typical timing chain set, and often you would upgrade with a double roller, and people have asked me why I didn't use that. There's a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, in something as radical as this with a huge stroke and a lot of displacement, a lot of RPM, a lot of valve spring pressure, they use the belt instead of a chain to reduce the number of harmonics that are transferred from the crankshaft into the cam. How can I actually data log that? I don't know, but it's been common practice for a long, long time. Also, this setup is said to not eat as much power, and it is more reliable than a chain. I have broken timing chains, even double rollers. I have never broken one of these heavy-duty belts. When you install this thing, it has a very trick setup for setting the camshaft end play, but the bigger reason why this is used in race applications is right here, you can go in and loosen up these bolts and you can adjust your camshaft timing. You've seen episodes about how that can affect the power curve. Well, with this, you can be at the track and you can just go in there and move it a couple degrees one way or the other and alter that shape of your power curve. That, and it looks so trick. So anyway, that's the next level of parts we've got going on the 582. Next time you see it, it'll be a long block. And finally, it is all together in one piece, and there's some more trickery to show you. So the 582 is now loaded with a Moroso vacuum pump, which you can see here. You can buy from Moroso all sorts of different versions of this. They can advise you on what's best, including the drive unit. What this does is it works almost like an old school smog pump. There's vanes inside it, so that when it spins, it creates a vacuum. And you can see we've got it plumbed to the valve cover here. So the whole crankcase inside the engine is going to end up pulling about 8 inches of vacuum, and that tends to help piston ring seal, and it also helps with oil control. Now, looking at some of the other accessories here on the top, we've got a 1050 CFM Holley Dominator carburetor. This one is an XP model with really cool features, including the fact that it's aluminum, which has merit. It's significantly lighter than the old zinc models. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that this is not some boutique frou-frou custom tuner magic guy carburetor. That is Holley straight out of the box. Next, we've got this 1-inch carburetor spacer here, which we're going to test in the episode. We'll show you all about that. The intake manifold is an Edelbrock Super Victor 2 for a tall deck big block like this one. I really want to point out, this manifold is not touched as far as custom porting. It is right out of the box. So now, it all comes down to the moment of truth for me. We're gonna put it on the dyno. We're gonna show you how Brule sort of warms up into tuning and getting the final number for an engine like this. And I'm gonna cross my fingers that it makes more than 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. Well, guys, there's a lot of ways to make 1,000 horsepower these days, but I know that you love NA power.
Absolutely.
And big block Chevys.
Oh, my favorite.
He loves big block Chevys, and I want to see your excitement level Freiburger.
I have been waiting for this for a long time. I am super stoked about it. So I have to reveal that Brule is the one who talked me into the single 4-barrel.
Really?
I wanted the tunnel ram. He's like, oh no, it'd be really cool to make the number with a single 4-barrel. So.
Well, because it was going to be too easy with a tunnel ram.
So if it doesn't make it, I'm blaming you.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Oh, wow.
Well, you saw that coming. Why else do you think I would have set that up?
I know. You just really, like, phew,
So it's
right
all
on
on
Brule.
Right there.
My engine, my responsibility, I suppose.
Wait, what?
He's really trying to swallow your 582.
Yeah.
What's happening here?
So the goal is 1,000 horsepower here, and Steve ran it enough to make sure it wasn't going to kick a rod. And so we still have timing adjustments, jetting adjustments, and after that I would like to fiddle around with cam timing, carb spacer, whatever it takes. All right, we'll fire it up. We'll sit out here anxiously.
I can't wait to see it.
All right, I'm all anxious. This is going to be our initial baseline to find out what kind of power this thing makes.
Anxiety?
Well, yeah.
Power anxiety or blow-up anxiety?
Oh, power anxiety. I'm not worried about blow-up anxiety. After all this drama, it better make the number by the end of the episode. Yeah, so we're looking at 11.3 to 11.5 to 1 air-fuel ratio. It made 977.6 horsepower at 7,000 RPM, so off my goal there. And we ran the thing through peak torque, which the torque curve is like dead flat. Basically 775 to 3.
Yeah.
We won't know until we run it
Yeah,
all
to
the way
45.
through a full sweep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I would do next is put timing in it because the air-fuel ratio is still very safe. So we can see if it responds to the timing,
Right.
and then we'll look at the carburetor and make some choices there.
And it's my responsibility to set timing because it's my motor. So if it slips to like 42 degrees and the pistons leave the building, then it becomes my fault. So red lines are 32 degrees of timing, black lines are 36 degrees. Does it make you want to put 2 more in it?
I'm hesitant just knowing this cylinder head and combustion chamber, but we've got good gas in it.
Yeah.
So we can go another 2, and I don't think it's going to show much, but then we know, and we can go back.
For the record, right now, 987 horsepower. We think the timing helped. So I'm going to go tickle 2 degrees into that thing, and we'll see if it does better. .38 degrees of ignition timing, at least by my eyeball, says 991.6 horsepowers and 773 pound-feet of torque. We got to overlay it to make sure that it's like everything that we hope it is.
Well, I am reasonably comfortable saying
Oh yeah, for sure.
picked up 6.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a good jump.
And it did that twice in a row.
Exactly.
So it tells me it's maybe not done.
Got to go there. I mean, 40 degrees of timing would be really hard to believe with something with such a flat chamber and not much of a dome on it. Should be pretty efficient, but we don't know where that timing pointer's lined up.
I will tell you what I would normally do.
Okay.
Is I would not do more timing now. Because when we go do some air-fuel ratio stuff and get it close, the timing might change at 2 or 3 tenths. I would head for air-fuel ratio, get that kind of dialed in, whether it be spacer, jetting, whatever happens there, and then try another degree or so when we're done with some air-fuel. Take the wholesale changes or the biggest changes first,
Yeah.
and then just barely pick out.
Well, you're a dyno brain, I'm with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's look at the fuel curve and decide what to do there. So the dyno has 2 feed lines for fuel, one of them to the front bowl, one of them to the second bowl, and they both have fuel veins in it. So what Steve's doing is looking at the fuel flow front and rear and deciding where he's going to make his change. And you're seeing that you've got more fuel in the rear right now than in the front, and because we want to lean it out a bit, he's going to take some jetting out of the back, and it should even out the 2 bowls. So before you say it, let Dulcich and I guess how many jets you're going to go. We don't know what's in it right now, but I'm going to guess that you're going to want to take out 4.
I was going to say 4, but I'm going to go with 5.
5
and a half.
5 and a half. All right, we're going to go jet this thing. So Brule has this set that I like to call the barbecue set because that wood handle looks to me like when you get the Weber grill and it comes with the like poker and stuff. And it's the special step on it right there so that it works on this style of jet extension that actually tucks in behind the jet. See, the jet extension is so that when you're on the drag strip and you launch and all the fuel goes to the back of the bowl, it's still picking up fuel. There's 2 kinds. There's a kind that threads into the hole and then the jet threads into that, and this kind where the jet just falls out like that. This jet is, ooh, that's a 94. Interesting. I was worried that it was going to be like a 96 or a 98. Usually when you have a really big jet, like let's say a 98 in it, you have to make a bigger change because when they approach 100, the changes get less and less sensitive. In other words, if it's 100 to begin with, you might have to change 6 to make it change. But with a 94 in it, we can change 4 and make it change. What was the calling from Brule?
89.
89, so he's going to move 5.
Yeah.
4 digits.
Yeah.
That was 1,000 plus.
Yeah. Oh,
That was the one.
whew. I saw those numbers just flying up, like counting
me
up.
too.
That was beautiful.
That was a big jump in power for that jetting change, actually.
Yeah, sometimes you might be surprised.
We were high-fiving each other out here, but I got to see the data, because if we're wrong, I can't tell you what the collapse in my mood will be if it made 999 on the data.
I am 100% confident we're not going to ruin your mood.
Okay, good. Yes, we got it. 1,005.9 horsepower, pretty much with out-of-the-box parts on gasoline and a single 4-barrel.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That's why this was so much fun.
Yeah, and it's going to get better from here, I hope.
Yeah.
There's our curve, 782.1 pound-feet of torque, 1,005.9 horsepower. Look how flat this torque curve is, which is why it makes the power, because the roll-off is not as steep as you would see with something with a worse cylinder head.
You know, we've talked about this percentage thing a number of times. I wanted to show Steve Dulcich kind of what happened. 781, so we'll say what, 78 horsepower would be a 10% drop?
723.
So it's 60?
Wow.
So 60,
So it's
which
8%.
is less than it. Yeah, it's 8% roughly.
And that's not even with the tricks.
Yeah, and what Steve's talking about here is how much of the torque do you lose from peak torque to peak horsepower, and putting that in percentage terms. Normally with most engines, you'll see 88 to 91%. 91 being a really good engine because it's not dropping off torque that fast. But on this particular engine, we're seeing something in the area of what, 6 or 7% drop off between those two numbers. So that is an engine that hangs on and continues making power upstairs.
Can we actually look at the change that made on the graph of fuel to fuel? Oh, look at that. That is just a jetting change. That's 5 jet sizes in the secondary.
Holy cow.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, from 991 to 1,006. I had said to him, he's like, you know, this is going to pick up to 1Z, 2Zs, 3Zs. It's not going to actually hit 4 digits. Wrong.
Some engines are really sensitive to jetting and timing, and other ones just go, I don't care. This one obviously is sensitive to change.
Well, how rich is it? Let's look at what your sensor actually tells us. That was a huge change. It's still running 11.9 to 12.0. which normally I think on this we would call good, but what if it actually wants a little less than that?
Yeah.
So intuition is leading us towards not jetting it again, but installing a 1-inch tapered combo carburetor spacer. I'll show you what that's all about. Here's the plan, a 1-inch spacer, we call this a tapered combo. You can see that it is a 4-hole on top, but flip it over and it tapers down to open. So it's got more plenum area. Theoretically, it gives a better drivability, more signal to the booster. We don't know. We're just hoping it makes more power. Charlie Sheen?
Winning!
Let's see by how much. And with the spacer, our new power peak is 1,014.7 horsepower, and we picked up a little bit of torque, 786.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we look at the overlay and find out how much that spacer actually helped and why? We should look at the AFR as well. Wow. Okay, we're gonna name this engine Mikey. Because Mikey likes it. No matter what you do to it, Mikey likes it.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how responsive this thing is to changes.
The red lines here before the spacer, black lines are after, and our reaction is the fact that it picked up everywhere instead of just at the top, and that it's that big of a gain.
Well, I don't know that it changed the AFR that much, and kind of part of the initial thinking was...
It didn't.
Yeah.
Typically the open leans it out,
Yeah.
which I explained to the audience. This time it just didn't. Maybe it's because of that tapered combo design. We don't know, but look at that. Ignore that because that's really not a big change. I mean, that's 2/10 of a ratio right there, which tells you the air-fuel ratio is the same.
This is at a point where I would try the timing again, since the fuel made a significant difference, go back to 2 degrees.
Man, this is fun just whittling away at the thing. I mean, we're down into just looking at 5, 6, 7 horsepower, but still. I'm gonna go put 2 degrees in this thing.
Whoa.
It didn't hate it.
Whoa.
I'll tell you that. What just happened, Steve?
It made more power, Dave.
Yes, it did. So let's look at the curve, because it liked it again. Wow, 1,020.3 horsepower, 788 pound-feet of torque. We cannot hurt this thing. Let's have a look at what it was before the timing, 38 degrees. Boom.
Ooh.
Yeah, it just keeps growing. It's not even really narrowing. It's happening later, but the gap is not narrowing.
That's pure timing.
So right now, we're looking at 1,020.3 horsepower, which is really cool. But you had one last trick up your sleeve.
Actually, VP makes a couple of different oxygenated fuels, and we have used Q16 here on a number of occasions. It's really more prominent in the drag boat racing community than it is in NHRA. It's a little more expensive, and you have to service the engine, maybe drain it between races, that sort of thing. For whatever reason, drag boat guys are willing to. But what I can tell you is what we normally see is normally 2% gain.
So we're gonna go pour in the Q16, or they are while I'm waiting here.
Okay.
Whoa, 1,038.9 horsepower, 797 pound-feet of torque, almost 800.
Yeah.
What a sweet curve this thing makes, too.
Yeah.
Let's overlay it with the gasoline.
Whoa.
Whoa!
Man, that's a lot.
That's huge. And it's everywhere in the curve, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ooh, and look at that, 7,700 RPM. It definitely rolled over there. It's
Yeah.
making peak at 74 right now when you actually carry it all the way out.
Yeah.
But man, that's a shrieking big block.
Yes,
Kind
it
of
is.
fun, huh?
Yeah, that's totally cool. Am I allowed to call it 1,040?
I'll give you that one. Yeah,
Am I
it's
allowed?
within 1 horsepower.
All right, we have 1,040 horsepower big block.
You know, I'd call it 1,040.
I know you would. It's only 1.1 horsepower away from that. Here's the thing that I've really thought through as I've sort of been through the process of this engine over the past many months is there's a lot of ways to get 1,000 horsepower these days. There's fewer ways to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. And I think what I've honed in on here is this is the easiest. I've seen 400 cubic inch Clevelands make 1,000 horsepower NA. If you're willing to spend a fortune on oiling, induction, cylinder heads, and 12,000 RPM, you can do it. But this ultimately is not a custom engine. Everything on it is off the shelf. It bolts together a little bit more difficult than a regular engine, but not much.
Yeah, you've got to do some more checking and measuring, valve to piston clearance, those things, just to ensure that you don't have any issues. But realistically, we never left this shop assembling it.
Right. There's no super custom milling. There's no trick porting work.
No.
The heads are right out of the box. That intake is right out of the box. Carburetor. The only thing I recall doing that was super annoying was I had to grind the back of the belt drive cover. But you got to do that every single time you use a belt drive.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're just lucky.
So there's nothing custom on it. This is all off-the-shelf aftermarket parts. And what makes it easy is the 582 cubic inches and the fact that it's the bigger bore and the shorter stroke. Some 582s are like a 4.560 bore and a 4.5 inch stroke, and this has only got a 4.375 stroke, which I think helps with RPM and the oiling.
The oiling issue is
Oiling's
the
big.
reason
Oiling.
I like the shorter strokes. The big strokes in a wet sump get to be kind of problematic.
Yeah.
That's why I love this thing.
Well, if you want big power, the big block Chevy is just the go-to power plant, in my opinion, every time. So, I mean, this just proves it. NA, 1,000 plus horsepower, bolt-together combo.
Yep.
Nice
Dart,
job.
K1, Comp Cams, Holly, Moroso, they all make it happen. I don't know if you'll see 1,000 horsepower NA again anytime soon, but if we do it, you will see it on
Engine Masters. Oh. I think it liked it. I know. I just can't contain myself, though, Freiberger.
I know.
You know, honestly, when I'm watching the numbers roll on the dyno screen as we're going through a poll, I'm like, go, go, go.
I know.
Do you do the same thing?
Yeah, and every time I see a number flash, I'm like, oh, it did blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then we look at the curve, I'm like, oh. This time on Engine Masters, how much power are you giving up to look this cool with your header? You know, at Engine Masters, we take horsepower very seriously. And in many episodes, you'll find us finding that nuance that just gets that very last edge of performance. And other times, we test a bunch of goofy headers just because we can. And that's what this episode is going to be all about. See, sometimes you choose an exhaust header for cosmetic purposes instead of really for performance. And on this episode, we're going to find out what you're actually paying in horsepower in order to have that kind of looks. We got tri-wise, we got Lakes pipes, we got Zoomies, we got gasser headers, we got T-bucket headers. But of course, the engine that we're using as a baseline is our traditional 383 small block Chevy, because let's be honest, this is the engine configuration that's probably in most of the cars that are going to pick headers like this. It's our regular old 383. You've seen us run it dozens of times. It makes about 450 horsepower. So the headers that we're going to test will begin with the T-bucket header. Now, I call it the T-bucket header so that you can sort of visualize it as a goofy cosmetic header. But in truth, this is what we call our dyno header. We have tested it. This setup makes more power than a typical under chassis header of the same size, which is why we always use it on the dyno. It's got that really long straight segment right out of the ports that tends to make horsepower. So that's going to be our baseline. These are a 1 3/4 inch tube, and they've got a welded on collector extension. And you'll see us using collector extensions on all the different headers. So that is going to be the bogey to beat. Next up, we are going to try the Tri-Y. I wouldn't put this in the category of a cosmetic goofy header, but it is a design that has been around for a long time that many people want to understand and know about, because there are so many claims that this design makes a ton of low-end torque. Now, to be fair, they're typically used in applications like tow trucks and things with much smaller, lower-powered engines than what we're dealing with here, but I still wanted to find out. These are automatically going to have a disadvantage because they have a 1 5/8 inch primary tube. However, you will note why this is called a tri-Y. This has a pair of cylinders that are coupled into one Y right here. Then this pair of cylinders is coupled into that Y right there. Then it goes into a 2-inch tube, and all four are coupled right here into the third Y, hence tri-Y. I have no idea what this is going to do. This is a Doug's header for an application of a GMG body. Let's call it a Monte Carlo or something like that. It also has the smallest collector of anything in our test. It's 2.5 inches, but we're going to run it with a little extension. So that's the tri-Y. Now we get into the real decorative stuff. This is a Sanderson header that is called a Lakes type header typically. Sometimes it's called a lime fire header. The design is based on the drive shaft from a 35 or 36 Ford, which is tapered like this. So back in the 50s, hot rodders would build their headers out of an old drive shaft. Pretty interesting. The main tubes are all 1 5/8 and they feed directly into that cone-shaped deal. In case you're wondering, we do have the bypass capped off right here because we didn't want the flow to be interrupted at the end and possibly hamper performance. So that's the Lakes header. Next up, the Zoomy. So Zoomy headers are really short headers that have no collector whatsoever. You'll often see these on dragsters that have more of an up sweep design or sometimes a low and down sweep design. These ones right here are from Schonenfeld headers. They are dirt cheap and they are 1 3/4 inch tubes. It's going to be really interesting to find out what kind of power it makes with no collector whatsoever. And finally, the header of my personal choice, the Fenderwell header. This is a unit for a Tri-5 Chevy. It would be in what most people call a gasser style. So you can see, you remove your inner fender well, bolt that to the engine, it goes up and out right behind the tire. I suspect this is pretty solid because it's got those really long straight tubes on it. And we're gonna end up testing this with and without a collector. And again, that's a 1 3/4 inch tube. So, there you go, the roundup of cosmetic headers, and we're gonna kick it all off with our 3D3 wearing the sprint car tubes. This one's just for fun. Bunch of goofy headers. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna learn much other than what happens when you install weird headers on your rat rod. So step one are the headers that we would normally call dyno headers, but in truth, those are like sprint car or maybe T-bucket headers.
Yeah, that's actually the way they're described.
Well, I'm convinced this is going to be our best header, so it's probably the appropriate baseline.
I hope it's not.
Really?
Yeah, but I think it probably will be.
You're in for a
I know
surprise?
what you're rooting for.
Yes.
I already know, Fenderwell Dave.
Exactly. Okay, Steve, give us a baseline.
Okay, here we go.
So this is going to be our baseline with our dyno headers, which are also like T-bucket headers. Okay, let's have a look. Here's our baseline power, not a big surprise considering that the last time we ran this, it had a single plane intake manifold and it was making 470. The dual plane hacked it down a little bit. It's making 451.4 horsepower, 5,900 RPM, and the torque is 470.9 at 4,200 RPM. It is what it is. The question is, the only question is, which header do you want to run first? Do you want to go from presumed worst to presumed best?
I want to get the tri-Ys out of the way.
Because those are the presumed worst.
They just irritate me.
Okay, tri-Y headers coming up.
That was a good answer. Oh, that was noisy. Oh, okay. Take her away, Troy.
Look what I found. Here's a shocker. I found some 2.5-inch tube collector extensions here at Westech. There'd be no reason to actually run this in real life. But I'm gonna throw them on here just to give these headers some chance of making a ton of low-end torque. Because as we found out in a prior test, collector extensions make a huge difference in low end.
Okay, let's go. This is gonna be great.
Are you still irritated by them?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, well, let's have a look.
You're gonna be more irritated when you see the numbers.
I think so
Steve-O.
too. Uh-huh.
Not that bad.
467.5 pound-feet of torque, 445.3 horsepower. So the peaks are surprising me a little bit. But let's look at the curve compared with the T-bucket header. Best possible header versus Tri-Y. Here it goes. Ooh. So the black lines are the Tri-Ys, down as you would expect, and the red is the dyno header. Kind of, yeah, you saw a little bit of a dip right there, which is interesting because the Tri-Y is supposed to be famous for making power right there, and it does not. I'm surprised that it matches throughout here, and I'm surprised that the peaks, how much are they down? 5 numbers? 5 or 6 numbers.
T-bucket headers are definitely better.
But by nowhere near the margin I expected.
No, they aren't as bad as I thought.
I can't be as irritated by the Tri-Y as I wanted to be.
I know, and I'm disappointed that I can't be either.
Right. How about you? What's your irritation level?
Oh, 0. I kind of like
Really?
it, actually. Oh, look at that. It's right there with the dyno header.
So you don't care whatsoever. You've got a little bit of a rash. Okay.
Admittedly, that's pretty decent if you can hang with the dyno header that close.
Not bad. So what do you want to do next?
We should do yours next.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No, we're going to end with those. No.
Well, you're outvoted, really.
Yeah, you know, you're right.
You know, I mean-
you and I both know that this is not a democracy. So I might as well just go put the Zoom.
Okay, let's go bolt on.
No,
the
I
Zoom.
was thinking Lakes pipes.
Oh,
we
I forgot about the
those.
lakes
Yeah.
pipes.
See?
Those are awesome.
Right. It all comes back to the
Those are
Freiburger.
awesome.
All right, let's go get the Lakes pipes and throw them on here. Make the Tri-Ys look great. Okay, it was terrible, but do you care?
No, it's just so cool looking. I don't care.
It doesn't matter. It's a decorative item. It made 445.6 pound-feet of torque, 425.8 horsepower, way down. Let's see how bad it really is if we compare it to the dyno headers, which are like the greatest. Oof. That is terrible. Clearly, the black line is the Lakes header, red line is the dyno header. This is kind of interesting.
But it's good for drivability.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it made more torque below 3,500 RPM. That's kind of a surprise. But did you hear at the top?
Oh, it labored hard trying to rev up to the red line.
Yeah, it's like it really didn't want to run. It was like, "Ugh." And I think that's because of the way the 3 pipes enter. They're not dead 90s, but remember we learned on the single exhaust how bad it hurts
90.
flow when you just 90 the pipe like that?
Yeah, that's almost 90, particularly the ones right in the center there.
Yeah, that's just going to kill it.
I think they're just cool. That's all.
But the Zoomies are cooler?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to the Zoomies next.
Steve-O, are you ready for the raciest looking headers we've got?
Those are my favorites.
The Zoomies. These are gonna sound terrible, they'll kill power, but they'll look the coolest.
We need a header gasket.
Right, we're firing up the Zoomies to burn the paint off of them and hopefully shoot fire. First of all, the important stuff, I think the Zoomies win for fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The Lakes pipes were pretty good, but nothing like this.
Yeah, and some style points too, you have to admit, right?
Yeah. No, that definitely got like rat rod style points.
I was thinking a lot like a funny car driver. Handbrake
With
throttle,
450
flames.
horsepower.
Well, you know, a new funny car driver.
Okay, let's see what kind of power they made. There we go, 457.8 pound-feet and 440.7 horsepower, and I'm surprised how nice the curve
Pretty
looks.
curved.
Really
Yeah,
nice.
that's kind of a shocker.
It was pretty good way down at the bottom at 3,000. It was still
Surprising.
pretty good. Yeah, for being so short.
Here we go, compare it to the dyno header. There we go, black lines are the Zoomies, red lines are the excellent dyno header, and I'm surprised at this right here that something with no collector at all made more low-end torque.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked.
That's confusing.
Yeah. That goes to show you never can predict the results sometimes.
Never say always is what that means, yeah. I would have said they'll kill low end and make the same peak but be down throughout the curve. That's what I would have guessed before we started, but obviously it killed power everywhere except for below 3,500 RPM.
Who knows?
Who knows?
The bizarro world of
This is bizarro world.
It still
crazy
wins
header
for cool, though.
No, the coolest is what we're gonna do next, which is the fender well for the gassers.
Oh, no.
Which are gonna make the most power.
And look cool doing it.
Or humiliate me.
Well, we'll find out in
That's
a
likely.
couple of minutes here.
All right, you wanna cool this down and I'll go grab the Doug's gasser header. So far, I have to say, every one of these headers has had pretty good bolt fitment. You know, typically there's one that just doesn't want to go in, but these have all been easy. Have you guys run into a bad one?
No, you picked headers that are really pretty easy to install all the
I
way around.
scienced that just for you. Ready? Ooh, I like these.
David always has the most fun on an episode when he gets to pick the winning part first.
How do you know it wins?
Well, because you picked it.
Once again, you can never say always.
Yeah, that's a dangerous
It's a
statement.
lesson I often forget.
Yeah, it's a dangerous statement in engine technology.
The numbers please, Mr. Brule.
Yeah.
Yeah, looked good, especially coming on the roll in. It looked really good.
We'll do it.
I like watching you do this.
Yeah, 457 pound-feet of torque, 452.6 horsepower. The Zoomies had a nicer looking curve.
Yeah.
They had none of this.
Yeah.
I didn't even see this.
Yeah.
I saw this number when I rolled in. That kind of drove past, and I saw this one. I obviously saw that, but
How about overlay it on the dyno headers? It's always the answer. Dyno headers in red and my fender well units in black. Boy, did they throw away a lot of power, but they made the same from about 4,700 up.
And we're a little bit right at the bottom. They were better, but torque-wise,
Just destroyed.
destroyed.
you know,
I know how to fix this. Maybe.
Maybe.
maybe. I know where you're going with it with the extensions, but what I'm more interested in than anything
Yeah?
is when the extensions are on it, is it going to actually lower this and pick this up? Is it in this area right there? Is it going to do something?
I think
Stop
so.
pretending to know. He's pretending to know.
Bad move.
Bad move.
We should go put extensions on and see what
think it's a good
happens with
idea.
I
that.
think, yeah, what we're gonna do next is put header collector extensions on there, which is gonna do something down here. We just don't know,
Don't know
what.
Yeah.
collector extension makes this thing a beast.
Quite a difference.
Look at that. 471.8 pound-feet to torque, 450.4 horsepower, and let's have a look at it without the collector extensions with the same header. Wow! That is just nothing more than bolting on an 18-inch tube on the end of the header. The red line is without the collector extensions, black is with, and look, once again, it's doing something weird down here.
It did exactly what I had hoped it would do, was lose some, and it's that whole...
It is, it's crazy. I mean, we found this out when we did the whole episode about collector extensions.
Yeah.
But man, that is a lot of meat right there. That makes the car go faster or do better burnouts anyway.
It makes it do a lot of stuff better.
Wow, that's great.
And picked up the peak torque number, a big number too.
Yeah.
This is huge. That's going to be the thing that everyone looks at. This is the most interesting to me. A collector extension that lost power below 3,200.
I think we need to go cut it shorter. Why?
We've done that episode.
It made sense though. It worked.
But where do you end up with it?
I know.
You know, then it ends up someplace in between. But this is what I was kind of...
Well, no, I'm more thinking that it adds it up here back. But you don't know.
You know, we're talking 2 horsepower. That could be...
Yeah.
Just it flip-flop those completely. I mean, it just swapped.
Which made the curve kind of more similar to our dyno headers.
Yeah. In fact, I bet when we look at that...
We need to look at that. Okay, so pull off the one without the collector extensions. And right now we're going to compare the fender well header with collector extensions to our dyno headers, or what we've been calling T-bucket or sprint car headers. There you go. The fender well headers make more torque than Steve's favorite dyno headers.
Actually,
look at that.
Got a better average over the curve.
Yes, it
it's
does.
Almost identical.
Actually, I think I have new dyno headers.
These are them.
I think so.
I know, except for that they're horrible to work around.
Oh, they are.
Because they burn you right in the giblets. But aside from that...
You can't get to anything, but they really are good on power.
Man, look at that.
Wow.
That is awesome. Black lines are my fender well headers, and the red is like our world's greatest dyno header that we use every single time. And they absolutely match above 4,000 RPM, and from 3,000 to 4,000, the fender wells make more power, and then there's still a weird little wobble right here where if we pulled it even lower.
It's so
That's the entry number on the dyno also, so you don't even know.
I really didn't think what I saw was going to be this much better than the dyno header, because this number looked pretty similar. The peak number looked pretty similar over there, and it was almost identical up here. So I thought it was going to be kind of an overlay, but boy, there's a chunk of meat there.
What I want to know now is, on these fender well headers, the collector extension always needs to turn and go back down below the tire. I wonder how much just that turn makes a difference. What I do know, though, is it's worth having it on there even with the turn.
So it doesn't blow all the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it doesn't blow everything up. You couldn't put it on the car like this. The collector extension would almost be dragging the ground.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so you gotta get it level with the rocker panel.
I don't think having that turn is going to make any difference.
Or if it does, it's not as bad as no collector extension at all.
Certainly. So
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I don't see it making a lot of difference if it's a nice transition and that same length. So, no, that's impressive. That's a good header.
Yeah, it sure is.
Can we overlay every header that we've tested here just for grins? Now we've got a graph here that's sort of confusing to look at. It's got every header that we have tested here. Let me go through the colors for you. Black is going to be our best ones, the fender well headers with the extensions on it. Then we've got red is the zoomies, blue is the tri-Y, green is the lake type header, and magenta is our standard baseline dyno header. Guys, thoughts?
The only thing I see is, with the exception of the tri-Y, every other header that makes more down low makes less up top. And conversely, the ones that make the most up top make the least down low.
Look at what else we saw here, which is that the tri-Y, advertised forever as making tons of low-end torque, did not.
It's the worst.
It's the worst. And the Zoomy, with the shortest tubes and no collector, which is not supposed to make any low-end torque, did.
You know, I think it's fair to say, too, if we put a camshaft in here with another 20 degrees duration and a wider exhaust spread, different lobe separation angle,
it all changes.
We could we're going to see different results. So, so specific.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway is there's power on the table, obviously, from the spread of the various curves, but these are just funky headers that you pick for a particular purpose. So, You know, it just depends on what you want for your own car or whatever you're trying to do. I mean, you're not going to interchange them as equivalent kinds of parts, right?
No, I was just curious. They're all novelty headers.
Right.
None of these are ones that you're going, ooh, I'm going to race. How can I fine-tune this with my lake pipe? You know, nobody's doing that. These are all just for decoration, with the exception of the victorious and dominant fender well header.
Oh, yeah, if you had a tri-pipe.
He's completely discounting the sprint headers, just like they don't exist.
They're junk. Did you see how much power they threw away?
Yeah, that torque, Steve-O. I mean,
yeah.
How can you excuse that?
Okay, you win.
But on a bigger engine with more power, they might make that torque, but they're not going to make the top end. So I guess what we're saying is the results will vary. But in general, you can get the idea here. I think the Lakes pipes are, if you took the Lakes pipes versus a chassis header in virtually any application, they're going to kill power.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I think the same is true with the Zoomies.
You know what's fair, though? Is sometimes it's not about power. Sometimes it's just about being cool. And the Lake pipes and the Zoomies are cool.
So it comes back to, you look marvelous, as we do every time on Engine Masters.
You look marvelous.
As I look into my eyes.
As I look into my eyes,
I look marvelous.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay.
That was good. That was a good come off the looking good. That was kind of fun. Well, you know, that was a perfect out. That was just perfect.
That was a good one.
Look
marvelous.
This time on Engine Masters, light makes might. You know that making your car weigh less makes it go faster. But do lightweight engine components make more power? We're here to find out. It should come as no surprise to you that I bench race engines in my head all the time. And when I'm shopping for dream stuff, I always think to myself, should I get that 38-pound crankshaft instead of the 42? Should I get the aluminum connecting rods instead of the steel? Should I get the tiny damper? Should I get the aluminum flywheel instead of the heavy steel one? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Do lightweight engine components actually make more power? Do they help the engine rev faster? Well, I couldn't really build entire engines with different components to figure this out. So let me tell you exactly how we're gonna do it. We're gonna use this small block Chevy, and I'll tell you all about what that is. And we're gonna start with this 10-pound harmonic balancer. Then we're gonna change it to this 1-pound aluminum drive hub. It's meant for circle track cars, just to be able to run accessories and things. It has no damping ability, and it's super lightweight. Next up, we're gonna take the steel flywheel and the big dyno drive hub that weighs 44 pounds, and we're gonna change it up for this 2-pound little drive hub. And then we're gonna run the engine and find out, does it actually make more power to ditch all that weight? And that's a big, big chunk of weight. Probably more than you can actually eliminate in your reciprocating assembly in your engine, but it's gonna give you a scale to see how much this is really worth it. And to find out, we're gonna accelerate this engine at 2 different rates on the dyno. 300 RPM per second and 600 RPM per second, and compare the two. We'll explain more about that once I sit down with the Steves. So, what is the engine that we're using for this big test? This is a Westech mill that's been around, and it's got 10,000 dyno pulls on it. We really are impressed with the reliability of this thing. It is a Dart SHP 372 cubic inch small block Chevy. The whole short block you can buy from Dart as is. They run fantastic. Up in the top end, we've got AFR, Airflow Research 195 street heads. We have an Edelbrock dual plane RPM air gap intake manifold. We got a 750 Holley XP. The camshaft in this thing is from Comp Cams. It's a hydraulic roller with solid roller lifters on it. You can see that trick in an earlier episode of Engine Masters. And its duration is 242 at 50 on the intake. So this thing should make neighborhood of 500 horsepower. We're gonna put it on the dyno right now with these heavy parts on it, and second, change it up to the light stuff and see what happens. All right, we got our 377 on the dyno for the baseline. You've tested this thing 10,000 times.
A few.
So there's going to be no surprises here.
No.
The thing I want to describe to the audience at this point is how are we going to tell the difference in power between the heavy components and the lightweight components? It's more than just straight horsepower on the curve.
It's going to show up in one of two ways, acceleration rate or horsepower. And since we have a controlled acceleration rate, we're going to look at a power difference. So what I'm going to do is accelerate the engine at 2 different RPMs, 300 and 600 RPM per second.
Like we just threw together the COVID 350 and the 56
Right.
Chevy. How fast did that thing tack in the car?
Oh man, it had the aluminum flywheel and it was just zinged up there like crazy. But I mean, you've done drag racing, right? And you've done land speed racing. And it's kind of an analogy what we're doing right here. I mean, land speed racing, weight of the car is not as much of a factor as in drag racing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, you're not overcoming inertia, which is what we're talking about here, but even more specifically about land speed racing versus drag racing. In land speed, like at 250 miles an hour, I'll gain 300 RPM in 30 seconds, whereas in drag racing, the engine's going, nyeh, nyeh, you know, it's revving fast. That's basically what we're gonna duplicate on the dyno here is 300 RPM per second is a slower than realistic acceleration rate, and 600 is, I don't even know what the scale is in a real car.
I think even 600 is slower than first gear in a Pro Stock car.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah, it's something that extreme.
But 600 is actually a pretty quick acceleration rate. That's actually a common test acceleration rate for comp eliminator Pro Stock style engines.
Okay, so what we're gonna see when you go in the room is first you're gonna run it at 300 RPM per second, then you'll reestablish your temperatures and everything, and then you'll run it at 600 and we'll look at both plots.
Exactly.
Cool, we're ready.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, don't blow it up, Steve.
That's happened enough today.
This is it. This is our baseline with a regular weight flywheel and a normal harmonic balancer. So that was our first test at an acceleration rate of 300 RPM per second, and the power numbers are 500.4 horsepower at 6,600 RPM, and it made 466.2 pound-feet of torque at 4,500 RPM. And now we're gonna find out how that changes when we accelerate it twice as fast at 600 RPM per second. It's always interesting how much power it loses when you do that.
It was more than I would have expected, I
Looked
think,
like it,
just
yeah.
judging by the numbers flashing by. But I liked the higher acceleration rate for the sound of that thing zinging up, but
Yeah.
I think I like the power numbers at the slower rate
I know.
better.
You always like the best power number regardless
Yes.
of whether it's realistic in the actual
Oh,
world.
yeah, who cares about that?
That was 600 RPM per second, and our peak numbers have changed. Now we're looking at 457.7 pound-feet of torque at 4,300 RPM, and the horsepower dropped to 488.3 at 6,500 RPM. Now, the data part of the program. Right here, we've got the black line representing 300 RPM per second acceleration rate, which would be the standard that you normally see on the show. The red line is 600 RPM per second. So what are you seeing?
I see that it takes a whole lot more power to accelerate something quickly. Like I said, it's going to show it in one of two ways, either an acceleration rate if you're not controlling it, or power if you are. So we actually went from 300 to 600, and the power went way down. And basically what that tells us is this is the engine's inability to accelerate its own mass. The faster you try to accelerate, the more power loss there actually is shown.
You?
Yeah. I'm surprised by how much it is, really. I've never done this specific test and looked at it, and
It's big.
It's big, yeah. It's really big.
Okay, very cool. So let's go change it from Cadillac mode to bicycle mode by removing the flywheel and the damper.
Oh, you're going to love what I did for bicycle mode.
I can't wait to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
This is going to be simple. Let's go.
All right. Whoa, Steve-O. I was expecting maybe an aluminum flywheel or something, but you just have a drive hub.
Well,
Where'd you get that?
we wanted to reduce the weight, so
That's
On-
reducing it.
on my old race boat, we had these PTOs. It's an 1 3/8" 10 spline. And so thinking about this test, I thought, let's try and make it as light as possible. So I really wouldn't recommend doing this as a normal practice, but for one dyno session, you know, a few pulls, I think we're okay with it. It basically has no dampening at all. You may want to take a look at this thing. It's
And the center
it's
of
nothing
mass
but a
is-
steel hub. There is no center mass. We basically removed the whole drive hub, you know, the drive plate,
Yeah.
the whole flywheel. We've removed everything. All there is splines in the back of the crank.
Boy, that's going to be good.
Yeah.
Good thinking.
Now we've got the lightweight components on the engine, and we're gonna go for the base 300 RPM per second pull.
Now, how can you tell that relay likes it?
I know, because he's playing with it. How come it just makes the engine so much more wicked?
It just does. It sounds
cool.
way better, too.
Yeah.
Dude.
Makes good power.
Yeah, it does.
That's cool.
Wow.
That's really cool.
That's a heck of a lot.
Thing is, it's 44 pounds off the back.
I know, but
Yeah.
to me, it seemed like it was better at the hit, too.
Yeah, it
which
seemed like
it's
it was.
static right there.
That was 300 RPM per second, our baseline with the lightweight components on the engine, and we made 478.9 pound-feet of torque at 4,400 RPM and 516.2 horsepower at 6,600 RPM. Next up, the faster run, 600 RPM per second with the lightweight components. So on our faster 600 RPM per second pull, we made 474.7 pound-feet of torque at 4,600 RPM and 511.4 horsepower at 6,500.
So 300 light.
Yeah, the first thing we should look at is the test we just did at 300 RPM per second with the lightweight components, or should I say the non-existent components?
That makes them light.
Right. They are vapor.
Yeah, it's
So there came up quite a bit. New power peak for this engine though, 516.2. It's never been there before, at least not with this particular combo.
right.
Now this is gonna be the comparison of the heavyweight parts versus the super lightweight parts. Wow, train tracks, absolute the same except for right off the hit.
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing. So if it wasn't obvious, the red lines are with the full weight flywheel and drive plate, 44 pounds worth, and with a 10-pound damper versus the components that weigh a couple pounds each.
I'm glad you decided to put this kind of like on the test schedule.
Yeah.
We've done this before, just kind of like with the acceleration rate stuff, but we've never taken the time to put that small of a balancer, or hub, I should say, on it, and actually really try and lighten the components. And taking all that flywheel stuff off, I mean, it sounded like a sprint car when I touched the
I know, it was
throttle.
great.
Yeah. It sounded like a mini top fuel the way you could whack it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, it was great. So I did the math on the difference between these two. We lost 12.7 pound-feet and 15.8 horsepower by adding heavyweight parts, or we gained those numbers by going to lightweight
By the
parts.
light ones, yeah.
Yeah, and it looks to me like that's exactly the change within a spec at every point in the curve except for right here. Yeah, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Where do you find that?
Amazing. All right, let's have a look at 600 light versus 600 heavy. Wow.
It's even more.
Even bigger change when you're accelerating the engine faster. It hates it even more to have to carry all that dead weight. Wow. So I did the math on this also. The change is far greater. So at 300 RPM per second, the loss with the heavier parts was 12.7 pound-feet. It's 17 with the faster acceleration rate. And the horsepower changes from 15.8 to 23.
Wow.
So the faster you accelerate the engine, the worse it gets when you've got heavy components in the rotating and reciprocating assembly.
I mean, there's sections in here that are almost 30 horsepower.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? Yeah, like I say, we've done this before, but I've never seen gains like that. I've never worked that hard to get the weight off.
What's really interesting to me is not only that we showed the difference in power, but that we showed the faster you accelerate the engine, the worse it gets.
Yes, yes.
That's really my key takeaway at this point.
In the car, it's going to vary a lot more than that because you're going to be accelerating sometimes a lot faster than 600 RPM per second.
Yeah, I think for sure. And the other thing that's interesting is when we saw you playing with the engine before it was running, you're doing the wabba, wabba. Yeah. It also comes down much faster.
You ought to see what happens when I hit the off switch.
It just
ding,
off.
Half a rotation, it's boom.
Yeah,
it's
just
done.
dead.
It starts easier, I swear.
Yeah. No, it did.
Yeah.
When you started, I was thinking through that, and it's because when it first starts and it's only got a couple cylinders hitting, it no longer has to overcome all of that stuff to get running. It just bam!
At first, I thought this can't be. But then I shut it off, and it was literally, I could barely touch the start button. Boom, and it was running.
Totally.
So all of it.
It's wild.
You know, something else I was thinking was in the car, it would make more difference in first gear than it would in high gear.
Right, because of
faster acceleration
rate. But let's get into the real world downsides of it. First of all, we took 44 pounds off the flywheel alone. In the real world with a small block Chevy, steel flywheel is going to be about 30, 32, and aluminum's going to be about 15.
Okay.
So you're taking 15 pounds off.
Okay.
So, and then with the front damper, I don't know what the weight is on those, but you could go from a 6.5 to an 8-inch, and that's a difference. So I guess what I'm saying is that the scale in the real world for an engine like this is going to be smaller.
Sure. I mean, we were demonstrating what happens, but by the time you're done with a good piston and a lighter connecting rod and buying the 60-pound big block crank or the 43-pound small block crank, by the time you're done picking away, you've knocked 40 pounds out of it. You can take 30, 20 pounds out of the crankshaft in a lot of cases.
Right.
Which, don't forget, is also just weight off the car and weight off the nose of the car. So, yeah, I think you're going to have to go further to get this kind of gain on this engine in the real world than we actually did on the dyno. Because the other thing is, you don't even want to run this thing over and over because it's got no damping in the front whatsoever.
I don't like the idea of having no dampener in the front. I'm perfectly fine with like a little 6-incher as long as it has some sort of ability elastomer or something there to dampen it. But with nothing there, I've seen timing chains break because of no dampening. There's a reason sprint cars run gear drives.
Okay.
Because they have no dampening, and it will break timing chains. I've seen it happen with blower motors. So a lot of this stuff, you know, the jerking back and forth, crankshaft manufacturers will tell you to use the lightest balancer possible, typically is what they'll tell you, as long as it's a harmonic balancer. Crankshaft manufacturers don't like drive hubs like this.
No, of course not.
No.
So, but it's just,
I get that.
like I say, it's just demonstration purposes.
I think it's also cause and effect. If you don't run a hub, the crankshaft is accelerating both directions more quickly than it would otherwise, which is also why it's breaking those timing sets.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
With more weight on it, it goes, oh, instead of, hada! And so it's changing direction much more slowly.
Again, that's what crankshafts hate, is they hate being at one speed and changing to another.
Right. Here's the other thing, though, and we were worried about this recently. We just put an aluminum flywheel on my 56 Chevy, and I was worried because if you have a dump truck, you don't want a light flywheel. You need the stored energy of a big, heavy flywheel. If you have a rock crawling Jeep and you want to chug along at 300 RPM crawling rocks, you don't want a light flywheel. You want the heaviest one that you can get.
Yeah.
But for the drag car that was lightweight with a 411 in the back and a stick, I went ahead and got the 15-pound flywheel, and I think it's helping me for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool. And it does a little bit of that wah kind of like this does.
You know, I grew up when we were using 50-pound flywheels in 288 cubic inch small blocks.
How did the horse pull that?
Well,
It took him a second.
we had 350 or 400 of them with the tunnel ramp, so. But that, you know, it's a 3,800-pound 56 Chevy or, you know, something with 288 cubic inches. It was not going to leave with aluminum flywheels. So that stored energy is accurate when you talk about that.
Yeah, I guess I make that point really specifically so that you don't realize, hey, let me just get rid of my flywheel and go. You know what it makes me realize about automatic transmissions too, is that when you do drag race converters that get smaller and smaller, that's also an advantage. And when you have lockup converters and big heavy billet units like in a 4L80 that weigh a ton, that's also a downside.
You know, anything you're rotating takes power to do it. The smaller the circumference or the diameter distance from center, the less affected the engine is by that. So the flywheel that's 14 inches in diameter is going to be a huge deal. If it's something located, a drill mark that's located 1.5 inches off center of the crankshaft, isn't going to matter much.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the car, it doesn't end at the end of the crankshaft when you're going down the road or down the track, because you're
Drive
also
shaft,
turning the
wheels and
gears in the transmission, the main shaft, the counter shaft, all of that stuff. So,
Yep. I bet this makes a bigger difference on a big block with a big Hankin stroke than it does on a little small block, too.
It absolutely does.
And it makes more difference with higher RPM also.
Yep, all those things.
Like, ding.
Got us thinking.
Man, this is really cool. So, once again, more answers, more questions, more data, all the stuff that you get every time on
Engine Masters.
Do we have the hydraulic here,
Hydraulic, manual.
Did you hear him when he said that?
Yeah.
He looked at you like you'd insulted him by saying hydraulic. Hydraulic? Not on my 372, you won't.
Yeah.
Did you see me?
Can you just do it one more time for close-up?
Hello, xin chào tất cả các bạn nha, lại là mình đây. Lại ra những video hay cho các bạn xem này. Các bạn ơi, các bạn thứ hai thì hãy like và comment cho kênh của mình thật hay nhá. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi kênh của mình. Thank you các bạn rất nhiều nhé. Ok, thank you.
Có gương mà.
Đấy. Anh toàn chơi này. Nào sắm gương. Gương trước của anh ở đâu? Ô này, có anh Nam này. Tiền.
Có chai nước cái này nhỉ?
Không giá.
Hả?
Giá rồi.
Ai giả?
Xếp giá.
Bỏ lấy thì anh giả luôn rồi.
Đấy, tiền giá nó không có tiền giá. Xếp bắn tài khoản. Rồi chịu biết làm sao.
Anh Minh ơi. Đau lắm. Nhổ gì nó nhổ nó lấy nó mọc mụn.
Ai bảo anh mỏng mụn?
Mọc mụn trên đâu thì...
Không.
Anh nói em bây giờ đau lắm.
Anh nhổ, em nhìn anh nhổ cả
Trời cứ mắt đi.
anh nhổ cả một dúng này. Em nhổ chưa quen. Em chưa quen thế.
Tiếp về em chạy ra gì?
Ừ. Đi đi.
Yes.
Ừ. Đúng rồi. Kiếm đi tiền hả?
Đâu bà ấy cứ bà này ở bên kia chắc.
Bên nào?
Bà này là cái bà ở bên Đông Nai, Đông Xuân gì đi. Bà ấy đi đại đi. Bằng tuổi anh năm 94. Trẻ chứ vẫn trẻ. Gì chưa bận bếp phải mang chứ giấu thôi.
Vợ mà. Thuộc dạng đấy đấy.
Chiêu anh. Nó xếp bộ chi đồ ngồi ngoài. Dạ. Nó xếp bộ chi đồ ngồi ngoài. Cái gì ngồi ngoài? Đi massage gì cái không chi ra đi.
Chơi hàng ấy này đó.
Chơi hàng cửa như này.
Bà kia bà nói chuyện ông Đặng, anh hiểu chưa? Em nghi chắc là bà nói chuyện ông Đặng là anh Chi là bồ của bà ấy. Thế ông Đặng cũng gọi là Chi làm caviar được. Thế anh Chi xóa chặn. Mình chứ na ná hiểu câu chuyện.
Ông từ lúc ấy bà kia là biết rồi.
Mình ông giấu thì mình không biết, giờ dần dần mình hiểu mình biết hết.
Chứ người hay còn chiêu anh nghe. Anh vẫn chỉ anh lượng về.
Cơm ông nào động không, chẳng qua không mình không gần gũi nó thế, gần gũi tham vọng con người. Bây giờ vừa được sướng vừa có tiền, thằng nào chả thế. Nó xấu quá thì bảo thôi chịu, nhìn trông các chị trông vẫn còn tàn tạ,
$1.3 triệu nữa là $1.6 triệu.
máy vẫn còn mát hả? Chả nhắm ngày.
Yeah. Xấu sửa được hết.
Đây. Đây xem kiểm tra.
Xem gì? Không có gì khỏe. Em lúc nào sức khỏe đầy đủ.
Này em...
Anh không dám quát lên trần thì... Không quát đầu quầy đi ăn một Tết không đổi về nhà, anh không quát. Quát, nhưng mà sai thì mới quát, thì bây giờ không sai thì quát. Đúng không? Một Tết nhưng mà chỉ vô lý là vừa thôi, thì mình có sai rồi mình quát. Thế là hôm đấy một Tết thì hôm nay Tết ngày mai không? Em Tết vẫn như Tết bình thường. Chửi. Bây giờ người yêu mình hay là vợ mình phải sai thì mới quát. Đương đi quát người yêu mình, vợ mình. Phép quát người yêu không được phép quát mình. Có bao giờ người yêu em quát em đâu? Xong. Quát bao giờ?
Này.
Quát cái tổng nó luôn.
Này.
Em ơi nó sai rồi, tí có tí thông cảm đừng ấy đó nhé. Em tí có tí có chửi đấy nhé.
Em ngồi tịnh ở trong nhà vệ sinh em vẫn nghe kiểu này.
Này đấy là thôi em sai thì phải này. Đúng không? Bây giờ ví dụ mình nói sai thì người yêu mình chả phải bảo hỏi mình sửa. Nó sai này có gì nó nói không phải thì em ấy nó tí. Thôi lại bố. Sợ vợ. Em hơi khỏe á. Giờ phải sai đi quát thì bây giờ đúng mình quát thì mình thành người sai. Mày đúng sai thì mày đúng là đúng thì cũng thành sai. Không bao giờ. Mình đúng là đúng. Nhiều mày có sai thì đúng. Không, mình có sức khỏe. Mình có chữ kiến riêng. Nhà có lóc. Có nóc. Em đứa đầu nhà Nam con trai gái con trai. Con trai. Em chúng đang con trai tiếp luôn, em biết câu hỏi thứ hai. Chúng thấy bọn anh ba người có mạnh không? Dạ. Cái gì mạnh ấy? Mình thấy ba người đấy có mạnh không? Thế anh đứa đầu nó con ba các con trai hết rồi. Nhỏ nhẹ. Chưa gần nói đứa thứ hai. Còn luôn không? Hai câu mà với một cháu hai cháu hay một cháu à? Thế thì chưa khẳng định được sức khỏe đâu. Thôi đứa thứ hai anh mong con gái chứ anh biết có tiền mà mua đất xây nhà cho nó được. Anh này bật xỉn được. Và hôm nay lên anh vã lắm rồi. Được chưa? Nó bảo anh đi đâu phân đấy. Bỏ anh hả? Đúng, nói nhiều luôn nha. Không hề liên quan đến em luôn đấy nào.
Nó xong nói nãy giờ đi ở phòng. Mày lấy không? Gì anh nói ai không sai gì đâu hả?
Sai quá rồi.
Người yêu mình bảo người yêu.
Không, sai quá rồi.
Nó cứ biết sai câu nào luôn.
Tại sao tôi quay nói nhỉ? Em ngắm ở vô lý đấy. Thế lúc đây mình có phải xin không? Xin gì anh? Xin nghỉ. Không, vua chúa hay hỏi xin anh. Mà sức khỏe có không phải xin anh. Như Hải Phòng thì uống nhiều, thế là mình biết được tử lượng họ đến đâu mà. Như Khánh uống không nhiều nhỉ. Anh Khánh anh uống rất sức khỏe thôi. Hôm nào em buồn ví dụ như kiểu nếu em dỗi thì em hay uống lên cơm.
Đúng, em nói đúng luôn.
Này làm không phải liên quan đến quý đâu, em có chữ em. Ok em biết.
Nát ở đây phải thích nát luôn.
Vâng. Đây vâng. Ô, anh móc cái kia ở nào?
Phân.
Trong ca à? Chặn mẹ em rồi. Thế người nó cắm rồi. Phải để móc trước cho anh nào, ví dụ em lưng cụt mẹ ăn rồi.
Áp này. Nhão.
Nay có 2 tập em 1 tập thôi, của em cụt mẹ đi buồn. Con em không anh nó 2 tập thì nó 1 tập. Đây mắt nó lên rồi này. Hơn 38 mm. Anh ra chứ. Ra 2 tập, ra 1 tập.
Ông lên tên là cái gì anh nhỉ?
Rồi anh.
Ông còn chưa vợ.
Chưa vợ luôn. Mình có để lái luôn. Còn phải hỏi công nhiều.
Có cái gì mình để dùng luôn chứ.
Nhưng công đấy là công uống thiếu.
Uống kém.
Không chịu uống thì anh cũng được nhưng mà anh uống yếu.
Uống được uống yếu.
Chứ ra anh cũng được nhưng mà kiểu anh không uống này.
Không thì anh uống lần nào cũng chớ.
Anh còn vào vờ.
Dạ vâng, cái gì? Anh ta uống mệt, say.
Alo anh.
Ngủ à?
Em đang đi chết rồi. Em đang đi kia.
Thế là xong rồi lên bật cho anh cái máy nha.
Vâng, em sao?
Xong lại rút cho anh cái dây mạng rồi xong cắm vào cái cây đấy cho anh.
Vâng.
Nha.
Vâng.
Băng giường anh tuyết.
Ừ.
Mày lưu phết thì em là nói. Giỏi phết học tiếng Bắc. Được. Chịu khó học.
Thanh niên được. Ngoan. hơi nghịch tí vẫn ngoan.
Này thì sớm sớm tí thôi. Em trai biết không? Em họ ấy.
Em họ
Quyết định em gái. Vâng. Như anh làm 8 video cho chú nhé. Vâng, anh làm thì anh làm 200 video cho anh vẫn nhận thôi. Anh thật, anh làm được bao nhiêu video cho em thì làm biết là đủ cho em, qua là thiếu ấy. Qua anh làm 3 video của anh thì anh mới làm được 6 video kia. Nhưng mà ngày thì anh sáng đến lúc nào? Sáng nay anh, giờ này anh vẫn có thợ nên là anh ra sáng không lên thì buổi sáng anh không lên, chiều anh mới lên được mà. Chiều anh lên thì tầm khoảng 1 giờ anh lên hay là 2 giờ hay 3 giờ? Anh gửi chị Á thì phải hơn 1 giờ mới... Cứ cho là 1 giờ anh lên nhé, 1 giờ anh lên thì 20 phút một tập đúng không? Thì trung bình là cả tải. Không, nhưng mà hôm qua anh làm của anh được 3 tập cơ mà, nay anh làm của anh bây giờ có 1 tập. Anh làm chậm quá. Tập của anh có gì đâu, chỉ cho vào gen thôi chứ gì khó khăn đâu. Gen mình up lên có gì mà là thì edit thì sửa gì đâu. Tool đã làm rồi đúng không? Cắt đầu cắt đít thì người ta cũng được một kiểu xong thì lạ đâu. Có gì em? Rồi. Anh Nam. Ngày mai ngày kia anh Hà Nội em sẽ up video rồi anh up tay nha. Vâng, thế thì còn bao nhiêu ngày nữa? 12, 13. 5 ngày nữa rồi. Lâu nhỉ?
Xin chào, hẹn gặp lại các bạn. Xin kết thúc video tại đây. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi kênh của mình nha.